like art, you know, it just kind of shouts, hey, look at me, you know, and look how beautiful I am, you know, and it really is. It's a beautiful thing.
I would like to give a plug for the West Hartford Art League. They've got some beautiful outside art, you know, beautiful statues, murals. I don't know how they do it.
They have those boring bus stops, and this is just really nice.
It makes a lonely space, you know, a bit more friendly, you know. It just adds to the atmosphere.
And I just really enjoy this. It's beautiful. It speaks to me, you know.
I'd like to see more of it more often.
I'm not sophisticated when it comes to art, or that much for that matter. It just makes me feel good.
When I was really young, I was the type of person who would just lie down and look at the clouds and just see shapes in them. So, and just daydream. So I imagined this just kind of little garden where people could daydream and see the ladybugs, and it's just a magical place where, you know, the flowers and the animals and insects are larger than life. You could take them out of the day-to-day routine of, okay, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to go shopping right now, and just kind of escape. Well, I started thinking of this kind of cartoon, anime, kind of pop art. Each brushstroke, each color I put on will probably change the next thing I'm going to do. So it's very intuitive. So even if I have a sketch, you know, knowing that the speed, it just might change that. So it's all, I feel like it's a conversation, and every element is kind of talking to each other, and it could easily change directions. And you had to put a spot for a selfie. That was one of the requirements. And so I said, I'm going to do this garden, this secret garden with native plants, and it did change because of the site and the sun and the structure.
It has a lot of meaning behind it, and whoever created this piece used a lot of imagination to express what they're feeling inside emotionally and mentally.
A few years ago, I stopped focusing on trying to show my work in gallery. I started to feel that to broaden the audience, if art is out in public, you know, you don't have to pay for it. It's there. It's a message. It's free, and it helps that feeling of community. And I was amazed when people would drive by that they would say, thank you for doing this. I grew up catching the bus, and I always notice people here catching the bus in winter, and it's just cold. Sometimes there's not even a bus shelter, and I'm always like, just feel for how freezing cold it is outside. And so when I saw this call for submissions for this bus shelter mural, I immediately thought about creating some kind of warm weather secret garden. So during the dead of winter, the riders would feel like they were in someplace warm and sunny. I hope that they see themselves, or maybe remember when as a child they used to, you know, be in the ocean like I'm from Hawaii, or play outside, and hope that this nature and animals and wildlife will be there for the next generations. For most of us, we had those days in the summer outside with your friends, and if I can visually show that feeling and the magic, like when I used to make ant houses or, you know, forts, I imagine myself in this like secret jungle or secret garden. So I do call myself an artist inspired by conservation issues and climate change, endangered animals. But my goal is for the viewer to feel an emotional connection to the image. Not necessarily telling them what they should feel, but just a connection to the animals and the plant life. Hopefully what we can all agree on is it's nonpartisan. I mean, this is, you know, nature, the animals. I also wanted to be a thank you and a dedication to all the essential workers. And I've met so many people in the days I was out here over the summer, and there are people from all over the world. And they would tell, and we had 20 minutes when they'd be waiting for the bus. They'd tell me their like life story. It was very intense, but it always turned back towards art. Whether they grew up and they were known to be in their high school as the one who could draw really well, or someone in, you know, who could do calligraphy. And it was just amazing to see how art kind of connected everyone. This one young man, there was something off balance. He would show up kicking, the bench and arguing to thin air and just being really aggressive. So I used to live in Brooklyn, so I said, okay, I gotta assert myself. So I just walked over here and I said, hi. And he looked at me and he just, okay, then he started just being in his corner and arguing and still being aggressive, but he kept looking at me. And I was painting and he brought out a notebook out of his, and he's looking at me to see if I was watching him, and then he started drawing. I could see that whatever was troubling him, somehow that act of drawing really calmed him and it was very centering. I could see the power of art, especially public art. I saw it this summer. People from all walks of life, and they all had a story that was very personal, and it was just a heartwarming summer to hear the stories, and especially during the summer of the divisiveness and the protests. But somehow this brought out the willingness to share, and I felt very privileged because at first I thought this was something that I was going to benefit from. Like, it's not often I can get a commission for an art project, and I just felt like I got so much back in return.
During our quarantine time, our fearless leader, Diane Zweig, who teaches over at the West Hartford Art League, kept us busy all summer by giving us assignments, even though we weren't really formally taking class. One of our assignments was to create a piece in the style of Paul Klee's City of Gold. And so we all were busy painting buildings that looked similar to this. And they were so wonderful that when the bus stop project came along, we said, oh, this would make a great bus stop. There's 12 of us who worked on this. Because of COVID, we worked in small shifts, which meant you'd come in and do your bit, and then you'd come back and somebody had added something or subtracted something from what you did. I was famous for my bubble smoke here. I added bubble smoke all over. You know, it brings a smile to people's faces. It brings people together. It creates conversation. When we were working here, we had really lovely opportunities to talk to people who were coming by. People were honking at us. But now it's just something that, you know, you walk by another bus shelter and you smile and you go, oh, that was really creative, and it just adds to life. It's a little more beauty in the world. A lot of people are intimidated by walking into a gallery. The art is expensive. They know they can't afford it, so they feel a little funny walking into a gallery. But you know, out here on the street, there's none of those barriers that are between the viewer and the artists. We are a group of mark makers, which is an interesting concept. And the idea is that it's not just painting, but that when you make a mark, it brings something new to the piece. So it doesn't have to be a mark that makes sense, like just little squiggles, you know, that brings it alive. Here too, this is called asemic writing, which isn't really writing, but you think it's a letter to somebody, and it's up to the viewer to interpret it. You know, for me, I see a welcoming message. I also, yes, I did the outline of this around at the border. I'm from New Mexico, so this was very much a New Mexican kind of thing. It was a little homage to my home state. So, you know, maybe it's reminding me of home. Maybe that's the message. A lot of people have just said how much they like it and how fun it is to come across it. I would love it if it created community among the people who are at the bus stop.
I'm a retired art teacher, so I've done this kind of thing with school kids, mostly teenagers. And when the art project came up, it was a Paul Klee Village reference, and we submitted to the Art League a little line drawing. And that's all it was a line drawing, because the bulk of the project was artists who would come in and collaborate, add things to it. There are things here that I never put in the drawing, but other artists did. And that's something we wanted to achieve. And if you saw the initial line drawing, it was almost like a coloring book, you know, with the lines, and then it got added in with the color. Look at these trees. They weren't here, and somebody put them in, and they are gorgeous. They really added to it. And other people just, added things that really made it come alive. And that was nice to see. Kind of like people, all the different buildings, all the different styles, all the different colors. And a community is different like that, and the village is different like that. As we were painting, people would stop their cars and say, "Oh, I love it, I love it." And one guy handed me his number. He says, "Can you do one for me?"
It's hard. You can't go out, you can't be with people. It's hard to volunteer. This was something that our group, the Marvelous Mark Makers, was able to do for the community. So that's why I did it. And I can fill in blanks. I can color in the lines. When people are waiting for their bus, it was hot, they were in the shade, I would say, "Okay, pick a color." And they'd be like, "Orange." I was like, "Okay, where do you want it?" "Right here." And so I'd fill in the orange box. I'd say, "Okay, pick a space. This one." I was like, "Okay, what color?" "White." And I would just do whatever the person sitting here said to do. Why not? It's their bus stop, it's their shelter, they're going to be sitting in it, so why not give them the opportunity to choose what they want it to look like? It made a difference. It made me feel better, and it also was a conversation to have with people who are sitting in the shelter. My favorite part about it was coming back each day and seeing how people added on to it, and then having the working relationship that I knew would be okay to add something to their work, on top of their work.
It doesn't feel like there's not enough people like that sort of look like me or have similar cultures kind of around, or like that's kind of not the vibe that I get from West Hartford. So I'm at least hoping with this mural that it'll kind of be more of a welcoming atmosphere. A lot of my work is focused on my family as well as like my personal identity. So I feel like I figured it would be a perfect opportunity to kind of do like a mural of like my family or like my extended family. So I feel like if this mural is kind of a way to sort of represent not just like my family and where I came from, but also people with similar backgrounds too. We're here, that we matter, and that we're just like everyone else. Like you and I are the same. We're no different than literally any other person walking down the streets. Art, at least like through this means, is a lot more accessible versus a museum. As much as I love museums and I love, going to the Wadsworth or going to like New Britain Art Museum, it kind of helps make art more accessible and makes these ideas a lot more digestible for people, so they can kind of walk down the street and be like, "Hey, this is really cool." It's like, like beautiful art just like right down my street. Like I think about the specific person, specific member of my family, and then I'm also thinking about like other things too. Like I think, for example, it's like on his shirt right here, in the moment, I just decided to just write out all the unarmed black men and women who were killed by police within the last like year and a half. Like that's just something that happens in my work where it's like it's very intuitive, and so like I'm not just thinking about sort of like myself and my family, but I'm also thinking about like how all these other themes and all these other emotions are related as well. My grandmother, I feel like she's with me every day, even though she's been gone for 10 years. It's like she's still with me no matter what. Like I'm very much a part of her, and she's very much a part of me, as with family in general. I remember growing up, it was just I would see my extended family all the time, or they would come and visit, things like that. And then it was kind of like after like my grandmother passed, it was like that kind of stopped. In a way, this is kind of like my own little reunion, where it's like I'm kind of bringing everyone back. For as long as I can remember, I was always sort of doodling in like my notebook, and then I would oftentimes like take crayon and draw on the walls. And I'm kind of doing the classic, I have a day job, and then my superhero persona is that I'm an artist after hours. I take a lot of inspiration from sort of expressionism, where it's like it's very much that sort of loose, brushy kind of look to it, where it's less about sort of capturing the person realistically, but more just capturing the emotion of it. So I draw a lot of inspiration from expressionism, neo-expressionism. All I wanted was just for people to kind of take a step back and just be like, yeah, look, and not look at something like, you know, Black Lives Matter and just have that be like a point of contention. I just wanted this to be something much more precious. I feel like we're hitting a very pivotal moment for, I think not just for Black history, but also for just American history, because Black history is American history. This system was not made for us, so we got to change that. And we have to make it so that it's for everyone. Everyone can sort of benefit, have the same benefits, same everything, because is that not what the, quote, foundations of this country is built upon?
For me, bus shelters are always the areas where we wait, we pause for a moment. And I wanted to give a contrast to it. I wanted the place to be dynamic, active, and also some fun. Like, I wanted to add more bright colors to it, add more, you know, like activity to it, because I know people are already at pause, waiting. Nobody's moving. They're waiting for the bus to do something else. There's already so much going on in their lives, and I wanted this to be that contrast of that moment, to make some, like, make them full of energy again, get recharged by this dynamic bus shelter, and then also kind of with the idea of introspection. So if you see, this whole is kind of, when you stand here, it's what goes in your head. And then every color on this bus shelter mural, like blue, reds, pink, they represent a different idea, a different thought. So all these thoughts compile and everything kind of goes around together in your head. And sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. My first color that I chose was blue. For me, the color is more towards calm and peace. I feel when you want to think about something important or something meaningful, you gotta be relaxed. So directing the blue colors in between is basically adding calmness to your own thought process and that idea of being relaxed. And then some of the reds and energies that you see, like those black dots, those are basically, you know, like the pauses when you think something but it does not completely make sense. That's why, like, they're broken in between. When I saw this beautiful framework around it, and when actually you kind of come here and stand and see here, you actually see the sky. So it's basically wrapping around your own thoughts and flying out to achieve your dreams, flying out to do something you really want to do. I feel public art can really change one's mood, outlook, when they're kind of walking on the street. For a gallery, you may not be interested to go into a gallery and see something. Public art is something that you're kind of invited to watch as you drive by, as you walk to the other street, as you are just waiting for the bus. So public art is, I feel personally, can have a more major impact on a person's life, because some people might be coming here every day, like literally every day, and then seeing this something more beautiful, it might energize them, it might inspire them to create something instead of seeing something just blank and not even like caring whatever it is. And I feel when you add some colors and some brightness and dynamic energies, it also transfers to the other person. So that's my hope, that I'm able to transfer this whole energy of dynamic or change someone's mood when they're kind of just walking around, maybe not feeling good that day. I obviously have a thought process why I did what I did, but it's also about the user who's seeing it. So it may be what you are seeing in it that I'm not at all seeing it and I have not at all done it. But I wanted to keep it open for people to perceive it in whatever way they want to. And I hope everybody enjoys it and loves it while being here and waiting for the bus. And thank you, West Hartford Art League, for this opportunity.
I read about it in the Hartford Current, and by about 12 hours later, the poem was done. It just like was so, it just like sang to me. And it's kind of obvious, you know, it's very simplistic, and I didn't want it to be esoteric or, you know, too twee, you know, but anyway. And then I thought, like, well, this is nice, but how do I make this into a 9x6, you know, bus shelter, this poem? And I thought, well, it should be in other languages. And then I was like, well, what languages would I pick? And I picked ones that I know people that could translate them for me. And then I encouraged them, especially, well, both of them, I encouraged them to please be poetic. Don't do it word for word. You know, make it sound, you know, make it lyrical. And this one, when I read it, I cried. It was so beautiful. This about más tarde, or going to be later, and this means more late. And I loved it. I just loved it. I was so excited. And then Faye did this for me, and she changed this line from tree-filled park to flower-filled park, which I also thought was very beautiful. Faye is my neighbor, and Jacob is my husband's cousin. So it was like, ah! You know, and she and her husband did this for me, and it's, you know, I can't read it, but I was, part of the printing was I had to go character by character to make sure it was exactly right. I've been dependent most of my adult life until we moved to the suburbs and moved to Connecticut, where it's so car dependent, on the bus. Without it, I would not have been able to finish college. I wouldn't have been able to put myself through college. I wouldn't have been able to travel on my own in Europe and different places. It give you a confidence, you know. So, but the main thing is people don't appreciate why going transport, going by a doctor's office or a grocery store, and then more lighter things, parks and the beach or whatever, is so important. And it's just, and it doesn't cost very much, but cars cost a lot. So that's what this really came from, that whole anxiety, and yet being able to get around and go to where you need to be, you know. I have been writing a lot of poetry lately, but I've also worked in metals and in pastels, but I don't like, they just come out of me. They're not like, I don't plan them. I find the materials and it like calls to me and tells me what to do with them. It's like a spirit. It just, and you know when it's right. You know, this took so little time. You're just driven. I feel driven to get it out of me sometimes. And to be in do public art is just such an honor. It's just, I can't believe it, really. I waited for a bus a few times, and it's nice to have something to do, though I don't imagine people are like going, oh, do you think that means the same thing? Though I hope they would. And it was kind of a combination of what I had envisioned and then what was actually physically possible. These are all questions that we need to consider with public transportation, because it's extremely necessary and it's environmentally sound and it costs less money. What about this space that we're living in this country that has so little respect for the people that use public transportation and give mouth service to environmentalism and things like that? Do you want people to get exercise and enjoy all the parks and things? How are you going to get there? It is kind of about this obvious racism that we're experiencing right now. The point I'm making here is this is how people need to get around, and not everybody, you know, it's an equalizer. Art should be an equalizer. It's like Ars Poetica. When someone recognizes what you're trying to say or the feeling you're trying to convey, then that is art.
The West Hartford Art League is so classy. It is such a part of the West Hartford community.